Remembering Rudy, this is a very important session today. Rudy Foundation has done a number of events in which we've been looking at a number of key people in the community, especially as part of Windrush 70. And we could certainly not exclude Rudy in all of this. Therefore, I've been talking with one of Rudy's daughters, and I said, he asked me, we can do something for your dad. And it's important that we do it on a particular day, this day. Now, Rudy would have been 80 years of age today, if he was with us. So so interesting that it also comes up on the 70th anniversary of Windrush. Because he passed away again exactly 20 years ago. So this is an important day for Rudy, an important day for the family, and we want to pay them all regards as such. Now, Rudy was born in a place called Essequibo. Those of you who are from Essequibo. In fact, the gentleman here, Pete, Radio has his website. Essequibo music. I wonder how you got that name. Are you from Essequibo?
No, it's a large man.
Okay, I thought you were. I agree. But the main thing there really is that I remember Rudy myself. I remember interviewing Rudy for a newspaper in Georgetown. Somehow I was in Georgetown in the early part of the 1990s, and I more or less, we got to write a few articles about people from Guyana and pass it on to a local newspaper. So I went along to see Rudy at his office, and I got an interview, and I actually wrote the article, sent it off to the newspapers in Georgetown, and that was it. Now, you're going to hear a lot of things about Rudy, and so I don't have to go through his biography. Alright? That's very, very important. But what I want you to know is that as part of Windrush Foundation, what we've been doing, we've been also considering a number of people who will be a part of a brochure, a booklet. We've identified more than 100 people who are going to be in this particular book that we consider as part of this booklet, and we're going to be including Rudy as one of the Windrush champions. Because somehow, we have had some funding from the lottery, so we are actually obliged, to do as we told them that we would do. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to introduce you now to Yasmin, who is going to say a bit on behalf of our dad. So let's give a good hand to Yasmin.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you to the Windrush Foundation for arranging this event. Today is the 20th anniversary of my father's death, and I was pleased when I heard from Arthur that the Windrush Foundation wanted to arrange a memorial for him, as I thought that he'd been forgotten. But I remembered after talking to Arthur how much he was admired and applauded, but I also remembered how both he and those he defended were represented as monsters by the press and by many of his peers. So I remembered how much he was ridiculed and hated, not only when he spoke of police corruption and police violence and institutional racism more broadly, but because he refused to trade his silence for a comfortable and secure place inside the legal establishment. And I admired the way he was able, in court, to shatter the mythology of violent black communities and illuminate the violence underneath the clean white veneer of post-imperial respectability. And how he was able to form connections between the violence of the British state and the British Empire with just a few words. And he once told me, as we talked about the Bristol Uprisings trial, how he concentrated on revealing the hidden Caribbean history of Bristol, and how this history shaped the policing of St Paul's. I also admired his emphasis on Caribbean unity, on the importance of unity between all ethnic minority communities, and on our inseparable histories. Now, I work as an academic here in London, and there are many scholars, some of whom are here today, who are carefully documenting and developing these political histories, but I still worry that the fine details are fading away. I'm not sure if our magnificent anti-colonial and anti-racist histories are being widely taught, or whether they're being separated from each other and thus erased. But we can, however, trace these histories in the work of our speakers and performers. Today is a memorial for my father, but it's more than this. It's an evening of remembering the histories of these political, legal, intellectual and cultural movements that continue to thrive and flourish. Today, I wonder how he would have advised the traders from Brixton Archers and others evicted from their homes. I wonder how he would have responded to Grenfell and to the revelations on the detention and deportation of so many Caribbeans and others. I also wonder if and how police undercover operations shaped his life, if not all our lives, and whether we will ever find out. He loved Brixton, as so many of us do. Thank you once more for coming here this evening, and thank you to the speakers and performers, and thank you to the Rudy Narayan.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, Yasmin. Now, we're going to call on Alex Pascal, who will say a few words for you, to you, and we'll also get a bit of video at some point. So, Alex Pascal, and you will get that.
Thank you and good evening, everybody. Good evening. Nice to see people out on this sunny evening. I'm pleased that you've come here for Rudy and not the football. Good stuff. Seldom would you see me with paper in my hand to read. And I just decided Rudy has been such a deep and wonderful person, I must not sort of just skip over words. So forgive me if you see me reading for once from paper. I followed Rudy quite a lot. Yasmin, when I got your call, I was tickled, really and truly, because we haven't spoken for some time, and I thought for Dad, I must be here. Where is Mom? Where is Mrs. Narayan? Madam, so nice to see you. You know how many years we have not seen? But I decided for you and for Yasmin, I'm coming here for Rudy this evening. Continually said to Arif Ali, Arif, when are we going to do something for Rudy Narayan? And Arif always says, one of these days we got to do it. Well, Arthur, he didn't do it, you did it. So I must thank you for that. And I'm sure he would thank you for it likewise. As a broadcaster, I have had the privilege to interview Rudy and follow him at work. His service to the BBC Radio London's Black Londoners programme as the chairman of the Black Londoners Advisory Committee. Rudy served all despite all the pressing commitments he had. There were days he didn't make it and we understood. I had opportunities to interview some of his clients, one in particular, the dub master. Linton might tell you a little bit more about that. Musician, arranger, producer and composer Dennis Bovell, who in his early years Rudy defended in the historical Cricklewood 12th trial at the Old Bailey. Dennis, on this little contribution, gives his own view of his arrest, his defense, and the power of Rudy Narayan. Dennis Bovell.
October 1974, my sound system suffers hi-fi. was involved in what we now call a sound clash, which was just, a showing off of what new records you just acquired to kind of entertain the crowd and, club. And a fracas ensued between the police and some members of the club. I only found out what it was all about when I went to the police station, because word on the street was that they were seeking to interview me. They accused me of being the person who inflamed the audience against the police. We were 12 charged with this affray. 9 people were acquitted at the end of the trial. And Rudy Narayan's client was the first client to be dismissed with no case to answer. Rudy Narayan was the one lawyer who showed how farcical the situation was. Keith Logan was the client of Rudy Narayan. And before the whole prosecution case had been heard, he was dismissed. And I saw that as a way of getting Rudy out of the trial. His client was dismissed. He came back and defended 2 other people and had them acquitted as well. At the end of the second trial, 2 of us, we both got found guilty on a majority verdict of 10-2 instead of the full 12. They accepted that and said, well, it's a majority verdict, you're guilty, boom, and sent us both to 3 years in prison. Well, I appealed. This time, Rudy was involved in my appeal. And I was set free. My sentence was quashed, my conviction was quashed, and I was given some words that I think amounted to a pardon or an apology.
How would you sum up Rudy as a lawyer of that period? Because we didn't have many black lawyers.
I would say that Rudy Narayan was the champion of the people. A champion, a person who sought to get to the bottom of things. And in fact, he proved that the police were such liars and that they had collaborated in their notebooks, And it was obvious that he was a thorn in the side of the prosecution. I'm positive that Rudy Narayan suffered and didn't achieve what his expertise and his dream should have brought him because of his fearless defense of minority people.
One of the most amazing things is to document people who will allow you to document them, and you keep it because the time will always come when it's necessary. And it's something I want to say to you, the elders, to pass to the children. When I left the Caribbean, I never realized where I would be, what I would be doing, who I would meet, and by God, haven't I not met people. Let me return to Rudy and say this. We always spoke about how Rudy made the judge sit back. And there was a policeman, Dennis, is too much for now, speaks about that he made the police cry. And when the police came to a certain point and begged mercy about the dog he had, and he didn't know whether the dog beat A, B, or C, but his wife is at home pregnant, Rudy went back and he came back like a dog with teeth. and ate into him. And the judge called Rudy, and Rudy went back into him. Oh, I always remember people telling me who were there, the story. I had opportunities to invite some of his clients, and in particular, as I told you, Dennis, Rudy served on Black Londoners' New Cross Fire Fund Committee, which assisted the bereaved families of the unfortunate 14 children, we'll only say 13 dead, nothing said, but 14 died eventually, who got killed. Radio London's Black program raised £21,000 to assist the families. And I think for everybody going back to that period, including prisoners, who sent a little package of money to me. When I come to moments like this, they're moments to recall because of the charisma people felt and the pain they felt to contribute to something like that. I recall Rudy at the very first meeting after the death call at the Moonshot Club. Lewisham speaking out, like you said in the beginning, Arthur, Yasmin, speaking out against the system. And I remember on the day of the march, he wasn't around, but I was speaking to Rudy all through. Marvelous father you have, really marvelous. I'm proud to be asked to endorse who he was so that other generations of legal visionaries, I quote that word again, legal visionaries. Many of you today who are heading into the legal world, most of you don't get me for that, but it's a fact that you're heading for the money. I'm saying to you, don't just head for the money. Head in and understand what Rudy Narayan built to allow you to come in. If it was for money, Rudy would still be alive. Rudy didn't go for money. He went out to help the black and minority communities here in this United Kingdom. I know that for a fact. And we always have to remember Rudy for that. I want to go a little further, and I'll give you some quotations I've taken from interviews I've had with Rudy. In 1979, 16th December 1979, that was before he was facing trial for suspension. Arif will tell you much more afterwards, if he is here, about how we organized. Oh, it was great, that I wouldn't spoil it. I will make that for you. It was great. I remember us in the yard surrounded, and it's the first time now that time has moved on, I realized that we could have been all killed if the horses of the police came inside of there. It was so surrounded. But at that period, anybody would give their life for Rudy Narayan. Anybody would have given their life for Rudy Narayan. Rudy was quite calm while I was interviewing him. Head down. And my first question was, why are you prepared to take on this fight on your own? And this is what he said. If I were a gypsy, I'd take up the fight on behalf of the gypsies. If I were a homosexual, I'll take up the fight. I will take up the fight with any group I belong to. It so happens I am West Indian. I identify with black cause, and therefore I take up the black fight. That's quite something. He went on. I said, go for it. He spoke of 168 barristers and him being the only one. And I said, Rudy, that's quite a lot. You alone to take up the fight for all the others? Here is his response. Sometimes it takes one to try and begin to break the mold. I think the other 168 are interested in the breaking of the mold, but at the moment they're slightly hesitant. I can't blame them. But 168 barristers are a lot. The commitment is there, the talent is there, the determination is there. That's a hell of a lot of barristers. Such was the conviction and determination of Barrister Rudy Narayan. His continued campaigning led to the creation of the Bar Council's Race Relations Committee in 1984, and an amendment to the Race Relations Act to prohibit race discrimination in the legal profession. That, to me, qualifies Rudy for writing his own script for the TV program titled Black Silk. The story loosely based on his life and work. I was asked to play Rudy in one. I played Rudy in one and was very proud to do so. And now to the wishes of the legal system. Here is what Rudy says. I would have hoped that the British legal establishment would have found it possible to treat us equally in the same hospitable way that they are treated when they visit our countries. I know we have our own problems, and we admit them. We have to deal with them, and it doesn't help us to be faced with all of this in England. In the climate of the Windrush generation, and the recent disrespect to us as Caribbeans meted out by this government about illegal immigrants, low-hanging fruits, it is hard to imagine what Rudy, as a Caribbean barrister, proud as he was, would have said or done. Yasmin, you were quite right when you said so about that. Rudy's support for the radio program and my defense against the treatment I was receiving from the BBC. I'll tell you just a little story on that. I was sent a letter from the BBC, and I was supposed to respond in 24 hours. It was sent by the secretary of the station, BBC Radio London, in a taxi, and she came to the door and she asked me to sign for the letter. I was nervous. We were going through rough times. I was fighting for more staff and fighting for recognition for black people. And then the only person I could turn to was Rudy. Took the letter, like today, to Rudy. He looked at it and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm just going into work." He said, "I'll go to work and come back tomorrow for the letter." I went to work. And the next day, 1 hour to go, I'm heading past Arif's office on Frontier Road, picked up the letter. And he said, "Go and buy a first-class stamp and put it on the letter and put it in the post box and go to work." I was worried. I got to work and the manager, Derek Amo, was standing there smoking his cigar. And he stopped me and asked me where I was going. I said to him, "To work." And he said to me, "Where is the response to my letter?" There comes Rudy. It's in the post box. And I walked in. I cannot tell you, the words that man threw out would have impregnated the whole of Marylebone High Street. And from then on, the rows and quarrels never ended. I have to end by saying, to many of you who knew Rudy, you did not know Rudy. I don't think any of us knew Rudy, but the family of Rudy. I know as a family you had your own pains because we occupied this man's time by day and by night. The fight that he fought has borne fruits. And we must recognize, like today and other times, and the young people going into the legal system, please remember the name, Barrister Rudy Narayan. Thank you. Here is the cup I would never forget. On the night Rudy was launching the Association of Black Barristers, I was in trouble. I didn't know what he would do. He got this cup and he gave it to Lord Scarman to present me as broadcaster of the year. Rudy, I thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Alex. Thank you. Now we're going to call up Keith Waite, and we'd like to ask, he's coming to welcome Rudolph Walker, who's arrived.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege, pleasure to see you again. I'm going to do a couple of things around Guyana because the Guyanese, I'm here for how long? Was it 10 minutes you said? I'll do Guyanese. So I'll give you a piece that we all knew as youngsters in Guyana, called Sohani Rat to start with. keeping in the same vein of Guyana, that one was one that was a film song that we all knew and heard by Mr. Rafik in Guyana on the radio, because we didn't have TV in those days. We had the radio playing. So the next piece I want to do for you is folk songs. And the folk songs will consist of some of my bird songs.
That was really good. Thanks very much, Keith. This thing with Rush, obviously, as you know, has been causing the government some degree of a problem, in the sense that they may have ignored, or they have ignored, the contribution that this particular set of people have made to the country. But this contribution, you know, goes back far before 1948. Let's consider when Britain first entered the Caribbean, 1623 in St. Kitts, right, St. Kitts. And then they moved on, Antigua, they took Montserrat, and then they also took Barbados, 1625. And then they moved on, they took Jamaica, 1665. And so on. And it's interesting, you know, about taking Jamaica. At that particular time, what Britain was doing is using African, well, I wouldn't call them soldiers, they were more or less enemy people. And they were the ones who went from the Leeward Islands with a group of soldiers from Britain to take Jamaica from the Spanish. Now I understand, I've read that it was an easy takeover from the Spanish. The Spanish didn't really put up a fight. But it's also interesting that at that time, Jamaicans really, perhaps, were talking Spanish. They weren't English people, right? Because Spanish had Jamaica. And it's interesting also that what the Caribbean people took, this is the Black Caribbean, so Jamaica, is a particular way of speaking, especially Antiguans. Antiguans have a slight resemblance of the way Jamaicans talk. So Jamaicans more or less were learning that particular twang from those people who came along with the British to take Jamaica in 1665. And that was a part of the history of Jamaica and its learning the English as Jamaicans speak it. But the point I'm trying to make is this, is that contribution goes back a long while. In fact, this particular year, would be 395 years since Britain was in the Caribbean. It's a long time. And the contribution has always been there, importantly. African people have actually fought in almost every war that the British had against the Americans, 1776. Go back even before that, Africans fighting. 1795, the West India Regiment, an all-black regiment, and so on. And that's the kind of history that goes back a long time, not just about the Windrush. So when David Lammy began to speak, he caused an uproar, because he was referring to the facts, right? And then in the 1820s, 1830s, what does Britain do? Britain actually gets indentured labourers contributing again to the economy of Britain. And in 1939, it was Winston Churchill who made a speech in front of a number of plantation owners, or ex-plantation. And what he said was this: were it not for the Caribbean colonies and India, we would not have been able to beat Napoleon. Look at that. That's quoted in Eric Williams' book called The Negro in the Caribbean. He quotes that particular passage by Winston Churchill. It's also quoted by other writers, talking to people in 1939. Okay, so having said that, I'm going to have to introduce our limited Gracie Johnson. If we don't have Peter Herbert, I'm sure I saw him coming in. But yeah, that's definitely.
Good evening. I don't know why I'm here. I assume it's for your entertainment, because I wasn't given a brief by Arthur. He just said, we have this event, can you come? And I said, okay. But I knew Rudy. I didn't know him very well, but I knew him. I knew him back from the days of the Black Power movement when I was in the Black Panthers. Rudy came around and made us know that should we ever need a good lawyer to defend us. We saw a little bit of film clip with Dennis Novell, my band leader who I've been working with for the last 40 years. That was an incident at a club called Burton's up in North London. And it was Sufferer's Sound System versus Lord Coos. And I think it was somebody from, when the police rushed into the club, chasing some youths. I think it was somebody from Lord Coos put on this tune by Max Romeo called Beat Down Babylon. And then the riot started, and of course Dennis got blamed for it. I'm going to recite. Have I got time for 2 poems now? I'm going to do 2 poems then. This one I wrote towards the end of the 1980s, And it was a period when the Soviet Union had imploded. It was the end of the Cold War, and also it was the end of an era in this country of black radical and revolutionary activism. And that's what inspired me to write this poem. And it's basically asking the question of the so-called Windrush generations. How far had we come by then in our struggles for racial equality and social justice, and where would we go from there? It's called Things and Times. Doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, traumatized. Blinded by resplendent light of love, dazzled by the firmament of freedom, him couldn't detect deceit, already kick him in the teeth. Him couldn't cry corruption and believe in a man. Him never know about clique, him did humble, him did meek. Him never know intrigue, him never in that the league. Him never did understand that on the road to socialism you could buck up nepotism, in wife dangerous, in brother treacherous, and in cousin very vicious. Doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, traumatized. Now like a fragile fragment of light trapped in the belly of the dark night, like a blind man stupefied and dazed, lost and alone in a mystical maze for days upon days upon days upon days. Watching drifting across the ocean of life, without a rudder nor anchor nor sail, for days upon days upon days upon days, calling flotsam of the tides of the times, if you like, lost in the labyrinth of life, if you like. Doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, paralyzed. Shipwrecked against the sands of the tides of the times, meditating upon the bad old days. Face down upon the gleaming seashore, not so certain, not so sure like before. The salt of the sea, upon the sun, in him eye, and he would give it back if he could cry. The sound of the surge of the sea harmonized with the swaying bamboo trees, and him brains just a tick, all kind of thoughts now and night, like them desperate days of defiance, when young rebels did a fight against oppression, when young rebels did a fling firebomb, when they marched with them banners raised, chanting freedom, chanting justice, chanting blood and fire. When no crucial trail was ablaze, taking the struggle to a higher stage. Doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, paralyzed. Now wash up, wet up, mash up, him raise up, catch up and sit up. With him hand on him jaw and him head hang down, I consider how young rebels get old. How some sell them souls, some get left out in the cold. Some get elevate, some get depreciate. Some turn middle class, some are down the race horse. Some are trying to live clean, some get vicious and mean. Some plague with doubt, some still are tough it out. 1 and 2 are fight the struggle in them head. Lead the leaderless in them head. Win the revolution in them head. Yeah man, all that ton prime minister in them head. Doped, demoralized, dizzied, dazed, traumatized. Now we're wondering, pondering, considering, posing all kind of riddle to himself like, now that we come out of the one room there, and time and fortune been some of our friends. Now that we got the council flat and with this and with that, we color TV and all the mad kind. Now that we create some space and now for we own a little place. Now that we got the MP and the Black JP, Black Span the radio, Black Span TV, with Sir and with Lord and with MBE, I forgot, alright, that. Do we need another Moses to take across the sea and say, one, walk across, on a free, as we enter the 21st century? Are we long past that the era, that the stage, and is each and every one who have to rise now to meet the dawning of a different age? But he was wondering, pondering, considering, when he hear a voice, like the wind said, sure, adjust things and times, wonders and signs, but not get mystic, realistic. And in here an next voice, like the sea said, sometimes the pungent water of the cave signals a brand new life upon the way. Called The Unfinished Revolution. Now watch out, Mr. Man. Me don't like the way you turn, and your tongues are too long, you know, man. I meditate on the same song so long. Well, hear me, man. Me not preach, me not teach. Me just assure you how me see it. Because the truth, well sweet, just like an African beat, like when you see where you're coming from, like when the cyclish part you reach. So I don't care if you want vex or even one like you're perplexed. I'm going to show you when I say, Mr. Man. You just sit down and fold up like a cabbage. Like say you've got no understanding, got no knowledge. Like say you still don't realize, say, just the other day, we chuck off the choking chains of bondage. That in spite of the hatred and disadvantage, though we slip up and stumble upon the way, we still reach far down Freedom Street, still mindful of the minefields upon the way. So we have beg you, Mr. Man, please come out of your shell. We can't dwell in the past that lasts forever, you know, my brother. Now that the sun is shining bright, please come out of the doldrums of the dark night. History bigger than me, you know. Time cannot steal, but it can heal. So shake the dew from out your head. Wipe the cobweb from your face. We got enough work to do, but we don't reach Mount Zion yet. Yes, we put down a solid foundation for true. And one and two we well, I get true. For true, but we still not build the new Jerusalem yet. The time won't come again, you can bet. When we have a march on again, you hear my friend. Mobilize the woman and my friend them again. Even the picnic them are going to join in again. For freedom is not no ideology. Freedom is a human necessity. It can't depend on no one somebody. It's up to each and every one of you. Me not preach, me not teach, me just assure you how me see it. Because the truth, well sweet, just like an African beat, like when you see where you're coming from, like when the cyclish part you reach. So me don't care if you want vex, or even one like you perplex. Me just assure you when we say, Mr. Man.
I know you said a few words before we began speaking and things, but no, I did want to get him involved in something that we were doing. So at least, having spoken to a few people, I felt that we couldn't help but hail Linton. I know that Linton is at the City Hall on Saturday. This is what I understand. He's one of the people taking part in the Mayor of London's Windrush Day presentation. So he's going to be there in the afternoon. I hope I'm right, Linton? You're going to be there at the Mayor of London. The Mayor of London is having a special day. City Can is having a special Windrush Day on the 30th of June. That's good. Now we're going to have a little special something by Rudolph Walker. So can we get Rudolph to come and say it?
Totally unexpected. And Linton, I didn't walk with any poem. So, no, I can't go amiss without paying my tribute to my dear old friend, Rudy. Not many of you all would know that Rudy was instrumental in a television series I did called Black Silk, in which I tried desperately to be Rudy Narayan. It all came about many years ago, of course, when I stayed with him in Birmingham. I'm not going to describe what the house was like, but after a couple of weeks he said, Rudy, you should buy this house, you're not selling it. I thought and I thought and I thought. I said, that suggestion from a barrister is trouble. So I didn't lie. But anyhow, after a couple of weeks staying there, he said, I have something for you. I wrote a play, and I want you to have it. Do what you want. At that time, I thought it was a fantastic stage play. But then I decided to take it to BBC. And I got to be very careful what I say about BBC these days because I'm working with BBC. Thank you. I think you're a member of the press. But as you know, as it turned out, BBC, after a lot of toing and froing, within a short space of time said, yes, we are going to do it. Well, I was shocked because, a black actor taking what could turn out to be a powerful television series to BBC, and they saying yes. And that decision was made within a matter of 2 or 3 months, literally. I am fortunate enough because in the audience tonight is my co-star. I hope she hasn't left. Kika Markham. Kika, please stand. As you all know, that was groundbreaking because for the first time you had a television series where it went straight into the, what should I say, the criminal crime of society, criticizing the law, criticizing how things, the legal system. And as Rudy said to me during the transmission, he said he realized that for the very first time, pupils, student barristers were coming up and saying, you know what? In the corridors and the chambers, senior barristers were actually talking to them. For the first time, they were said, you saw that last night, and that is senior barristers talking to their pupils. And you knew what it was like. We have a barrister here, he would probably describe what it was like in those days, and I think it was out of that, the association, the Black Barristers Association, it was around that period it was launched. But it was a fantastic experience for me as a black actor. You know, we did Love Thy Neighbor, spent a lot of time in Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company, but to go from Love Thy Neighbor to Black Silk was fantastic, and I owe that to Rudy Narayan. I would say really and truly that had it not been for Black Silk, I might not be here today doing EastEnders, who knows. But what it did, it gave me a variety. It stretched me on television, which is something that in those days few black actors were allowed to. If Rudy was here today, could you imagine with Windrush what he would have said and what he'd be doing? But his memory lives on. Yasmin, a great man, you have it. Rudy, I know you're looking down on me, and I know you're following my every move, and I know you're guiding me to say what I'm saying tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Now we're going to call Peter Herbert, another speaker, who will say a bit about Rudy. Peter Herbert,
Brothers and sisters, just some memories of mine which are quite personal, because I was a rather green young black man with a bit of an afro coming from the northeast of England with a Geordie accent when I first met Rudy. And I think he looked at me going, really? Because I'd not met anybody north of about Leeds, I think, at the time. But he was introduced to me as the chair of the Society of Black Lawyers. And at the time, in 1982, it was virtually impossible for African or Asian barristers to get a pupillage. And he was not only somebody who was qualified, but he was quite easily one of the most articulate, sharpest, funniest, and most dynamic barristers of the English bar. Arguably that there's ever been, actually. My first experience of this very large man with a booming voice, who was encapsulated the word black when there was many parts of our community had a real problem with using the word black, both from the African, the Caribbean, and the Asian community. It was really not that popular, because saying that meant that you were making no concession to your ethnicity and the struggle. And the arrival, when he, in a sense, hit the legal establishment, they were at the same time mesmerized but terrified of this person who was the epitome of a sort of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King all rolled into one and landing at the Royal Courts of Justice. And that is a hard thing, because the British thought they'd left empire in Guyana and the Caribbean and Nigeria, and they didn't expect the empire to come home. So he brought all that passion, all that energy, all that intellect, and out, in a sense, outspoke all of them. So just some very small memories, because I know there's other people with far more interesting stories than mine. In 1985, the Handsworth disturbances, uprisings broke out. I was actually washing dishes in a restaurant in France when the 81 disturbances broke out. And the French came running into the kitchen and said the Chinese are rioting in Britain. And I thought, hold on, that doesn't sound right. I've lost something in the translation. So I skipped a few years, and I arrived, after all, everything had sort of sense quieted down a bit. But Handsworth erupted, and being called to the bar in 1982, you would when you eventually got your pupillage, people like John Roberts, QC and others from the West African part, who were my father's contemporaries, being from Sierra Leone, they said, the last person you want to be like is that Rudy Narayan. Don't copy him, don't go near him, and whatever you do, please be anything but Rudy Narayan. Now, by that time, when white people told me not to do something, I thought, well, I better do the opposite, because that's a very good indication that your own interests will be paramount. So I went to this meeting with, I think, Brenton Mitchell, some of you might know. And Brenton Mitchell was, I think at the time, the chair of Society of Black Boys, and we went to I think, Stroud Green Road, and one of those community centres. I remember thinking, whoa, these black boys are really disorganised, what a mess. And the agenda was a mess, and they were poorly attended, and there was a big argument took place about something. And I thought, things haven't really changed that much. And so we few of us young Turks, for want of a better word, thought we'd better get involved. And so we did. So I went up to Handsworth, and we heard that Rudy had formed this Handsworth Defence Campaign. And there he was, holding forth in a community meeting somewhere in Handsworth, after the uprising, talking about community self-defence. And Sigrid Cardry, QC, who had founded the Society of Black Boys in 1973, I believe was with him. And many of the activists, I think Beanie Brown, from Birmingham was there, and many other people whose names faded with time in my memory. And he said, we have to fight. And we have to fight in the courts, and we have to fight on the street, and we have to make sure that they know that we're at one with the people. And it was impressive. So I remember going up as a junior barrister with Michael Hall from, who was in Two Garden Court and Corley Griffiths Chambers at that time, and we were all very green, and they started to search myself and Courtney. Once all these white barristers go through, nobody searched them, and we were searched. So I wasn't that radical. I was a bit delicate at the time. But Michael was like, get up, what are you doing? And there was a big fuss. So there's a big argument took place. We haven't even gone into court yet. So I was like, oh, this is too stressful, And because the revolution comes on you gradually, it doesn't necessarily arrive immediately. And so we made our way in. We found our clients, and somehow, when you hear and see that injustice, because the magistrates were convicting everybody, black or white, Asian or African, everybody was going to jail. If you pick up a brick, if you looked at a police officer, if they thought you looked at a police officer, you were going straight to jail for at least 3 months. And for me, who had grown up seeing pictures of Soweto and the injustice and the beatings and terrorism and lynchings in America, that was just something triggered. Because I used to fight a little bit as a kid. And so something inside you says this is wrong. And I had Rudy, I see him doing it, so well, hell, I can do this. So there was an inspirational leader there. I didn't have to look too far. Because there's one thing he had no fear. He didn't fear his own people, he certainly didn't fear any white people, and he didn't fear the title that you came with, nothing. Which is very impressive, because there's very few of us who do that. And at the same time, he was brilliant. So, my little case, there was a man called Akpabio. Akpabio was Nigerian, and I had a chat with Rudy before the case, I'm sure, in the magistrate's court. And Mr. Akpabio was 18 years old, His mum was suffering from cancer, and he was sprinting for the West Midlands. And this fat, very, very large white police officer said he'd run 150 metres and caught Mr. Akpabio after seeing him aim a brick, a half brick, at a colleague's head, who narrowly missed. Mr. Akpabio disputed this, and he said he'd come out of his house to watch what was going on and had a look. And he was convicted, as everybody was. And we had a chat with Rudy and said, well, you better get the press involved. So my knees were shaking a bit by that time, so I phoned up the Guardian and I said, well, I'm going to accuse these magistrates of racism. Because Rudy's done that, so that must be okay. And so I put away the notes, as you do. And Mr. Akpabio, I had to ask him, I said, you know, what I'm going to do is use the psychology. My mum was white, so I know. I grew up with white people, so I know how they think. No magic about it. Generally, if you tell them, you're going to kill me, they won't. They might, but generally they won't. So we started this is a plea of litigation. And I think it was inspired by Rudy, but it was certainly inspired by that feeling of anger I had inside me, that there was a great injustice going on amongst all the community. And this was a question of the establishment putting us down, all of us, white, working class, Asian, African, it didn't really matter. Know your place. And Rudy's leadership was crucial at that, so I said in litigation, well, first of all, you don't dare let more than one black magistrate sit at a time. Just the same way they didn't let two black police officers patrol together, you know that. Or drive a car if you can't drive. And I said that you're going to give this man, Mr. Akpabio, 3 months imprisonment, at least. Because you don't care about the circumstances, you don't care about the fact that he's got 3 A-levels and is going to go to Leeds University, or his mum's got cancer. You don't care about the fact that they've enveloped his house and made huge amounts of money with a developer and got unemployed nobody from Handsworth. You don't care about all that because you're not from his community. And the clerk just put down his pen, and that was a signal, shut up. And I thought, no. I thought, that's a good signal just to carry on. So the court started to fill up. And whilst I won't do the accent, people, come and listen, come and listen. So the court started to fill up, because I was on a roll, I just continued. But I did see my career disappearing. You know, I was on a roll. So they went out. And I think I must have been fairly adequate because Mr. Akpabio enjoyed it. He said, I might be going to prison, but I'm going to go with a smile on my face. And the magistrates ran out, and they came back about an hour later, and they said, we've decided to give Mr. Akpabio a community sentence of, I think it was 90 days or whatever it was. And he was shocked, and I was shocked. But it was the first time that any person in Handsworth had got a non-custodial sentence. And they then came out, and it was in the Guardian, I haven't got the clip, but somewhere in the Guardian newspaper, a little clip, and they made a statement afterwards and said, we treat our coloured people in Birmingham very fairly. Which sort of said it all. And so it was marked, in a sense, another major point in Rudy's career, where he was about community self-defence. And he'd already, in a sense, with Bradford 12 and others, marked his presence. So he was, as far as I know, a household name all over the country. Long before The Voice, long before BBC, Radio Black Londoners, or anything else, a household name. In fact, I couldn't go into a community and said, are you going to get Rudy? I was like, well, we might do. And it was actually quite nice, because you carried Rudy even when he wasn't in the room. He was there with you. And a couple of other examples that I'll share with you, if I may, stop me if I'm taking too long, is that everybody has their personal memories, and mine probably aren't known to anybody else other than me. But he, in 1990, I think, went to, with my first trip with my 22 African, Caribbean and Asian lawyers, went with the Society of Black Lawyers to Howard University. and he had a relationship with the National Congress of Black Lawyers, with the communist African-American lawyers, who were at the forefront of the civil rights struggle in America. Rudy had already made that connection. So he introduced us to Angela Davis, to, I think, at the time, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, and people who were leaders, they were legends in their own time. And there was Rudy interacting with these people and introducing us, who were young at the time, to these soldiers and veterans of the struggle. And that was empowering. And his most generous act with me, one of the most generous things, was he said, well, I don't need these jazz tickets, so go along to the jazz cafe. And if anybody's been to Washington, there's a famous jazz cafe called Blues Alley. He said, just go along to Blues Alley. Now, I was a bit of a working class man from the Northeast, so I didn't do jazz really. And so I went along, and there was 2 sessions, 2 sit-downs, and I'm like, what is this about? Don't you sit down and you stay the whole evening? Because they're a bit cheaper in the Northeast. And they said, no, you make money and you have 2 sets of people, because there's some really good singer. So this black woman came up, and she's singing away, and I thought, and she's singing right to me. And I'm like, this is a bit loud. And I was virtually on the edge of saying, do you mind moving to another table? And I went back to the Howard University afterwards. They really, well, thanks for the tickets. But they kicked us out after about an hour. He said, yeah, but they do that. You know. And I said, there was this woman singing, but she made an awful lot of noise. But I think it was quite nice. He said, that was Sarah Vaughan. And again, I said, who? So he brought a little bit of education to this rather ignorant barrister from the Northeast. And I had the honour, in a sense, of being two more instances where the bar tried to discipline and get rid of it, because he'd actually terrified. And I saw bar council annual general meetings, which are full of hooray Henrys at the time and a few Henriettas, because there wasn't that many of them at the time. And he would walk in, and people would just go like this, because his presence was such that he commanded some respect and fear, and the fact that they never knew what was going to happen next. And so he had a go, I think, at the Attorney General on many occasions, different Attorney Generals, I might add. And there was one of his disciplinary hearings, he called upon me to be a character witness, and it was about the Handsworth defence campaign. And what they were saying very briefly is that he would accept a brief in one court, have a junior barrister, and have another case in a parallel in another court in the same building. Now, white QCs did this all the time. All the time. They got double booked, made a huge amount of money, got a client to plead guilty, and went on to the next case. But please, don't let the black man do this. And he also succeeded, because he had a very high acquittal rate all over the country, but especially in Birmingham, in murder cases and everything else. And anyway, they put this disciplinary action to acting irresponsibly, misconduct, etc., etc. And I had the, I suppose, challenging issue of going to the High Court in the Strand on a huge elevated platform giving evidence. And I was being cross-examined by somebody who was, I think they're a High Court judge now, Patrick Elias. I think they're one of those people anyway, but they're all the same. And they said, well, Mr. Herbert, Mr. Narayan is accused of, double booking himself. And I said, well, my QCs do that all the time. And I said exactly what I said here. And I said also, I'm sure, actually our reception, mine and others, was completely racist. We were regarded as untrustworthy, as unprofessional. People would screw up their face before you even opened your mouth with a little Geordie accent. And so it's perfectly plausible that he was treated in a discriminatory fashion as an outsider who was coming to take work, cost them money. And Rudy said, in giving evidence, that, well, there's a conspiracy. Birmingham judges, from the top down, have got together and demanded that I be removed from the bar. There is a conspiracy. And even we thought, it's going a bit far. That's going a bit far, isn't it? Because, again, it takes a while to be a strong revolutionary. And we all have our doubts, as Linton said. And so he asked for disclosure. He asked for disclosure between the correspondence that was sent between judges in Birmingham and the Lord Chancellor's Department. And he got this letter. And I think it was either then or an adjourned hearing, he said, this letter proves there's a conspiracy here. Let me read it to you. And the presiding judge of Birmingham had written to the Lord Chancellor in these terms. He said, "Dear Lord Chancellor, we are seriously concerned about a member of the English bar, Rudy Narayan. He comes to Birmingham on numerous occasions and acts in a wholly unprofessional manner, representing members of the minority communities, sometimes successfully, but representing them in multiple cases at once, and leaving an unqualified junior to conduct the case. We believe it's in the interests of the bar as a whole, and it's a responsibility of your office to see that he is removed from practice and prevented from taking cases in Birmingham or elsewhere until further notice. We are sending you a file of the occasions when he's done this, and we would ask you to intervene expeditiously to make sure that he's removed from practice." Signed by the presiding judge of Birmingham and all the judges, the sitting judges of Birmingham Crown Court. About 6 months before, any complaint was made by an individual judge against Rudy. So he was right. They had a conspiracy. He'd exposed it. The Lord Chancellor, who I can't remember who it was, actually, to their credit, said, "Well, it's not our responsibility to investigate matters such as this. If you think you have some evidence, then you must pursue it. But it's not, which it wasn't his responsibility, it was a matter for the Bar Council." That letter and that conspiracy was given significant publicity. And as a result, they could not proceed with a disciplinary action against Rudy, and it was miraculously withdrawn. So he did create some space, not just for himself, but many members of black and minority lawyers up and down the country who wish to do civil rights cases, in fact any case at all. And one thing that you have, if you know any relatives or friends who are at the bar now, you will know that there are equality officers at the bar. The bar's got an equality standards, and it's got all sorts of codes of conduct. And it had that largely because of Rudy. He challenged not only the policy in terms of community and in court, but the strategy with which the bar and then the Law Society treated minority barristers. And one of the things that he achieved was, we were in a hall with the chairman of the bar called Anthony Scrivener, and the bar was to decide whether they passed the whole of the Equality Code en bloc and appoint 2 equality officers. And Rudy was there, and it was like a scene out of some southern movie with, a lot of white people going like this on the ground floor, and a lot of African, Caribbean and Asian people in the balcony above. Because, of course, we weren't members of the Bar Council, we certainly were observing. And so there was a speech by Rudy, which was very, very short, actually. And people were sort of terrified, you could tell, because the voice boomed out, and he didn't need a microphone. And they were left in no doubt that this was a historical necessity. And I came, because I was sort of like, in a sense, a sidekick at that time. And I went to town on them, and they were rather surprised, because actually they expected Rudy to do that, and he was actually very polite and genteel. So we played a bit of a double act. And at the interval, just before that, Tony Scrivener said, "Well, if you don't pass this equality legislation for the bar, I'm going to go to the Times newspaper. I'm going to take Rudy Narayan with me, and we're both going to speak to the Times about what a racist, apartheid-like bar we have in England and Wales. But it's a matter for you." And so, at half-time, all of us from upstairs came downstairs, including some people who weren't barristers at all, because, when I think it was a sister of mine who's a judge in Croydon, her mum came along, and of course every black person's a barrister, so she was there as well. And we mixed with those people who were in power and control, who we knew. A lot of them left for the countryside, or wherever they came from, because they really didn't want to take the vote, rather like Boris Johnson, and they ran off. But the ones that stayed had a talking to. They had a serious talking to about what their historic responsibility was. And it was for a vision of the future which was inclusive and diverse and not nearly as racist and xenophobic as it had been in the past. And when they came back, it was voted through virtually unanimously. And that, in a sense, is one of the times where, above all else, stands out in my mind as a sort of turning point for the bar, because the law side followed. And it was at a time, long before Stephen Lawrence was murdered, long before any profession had equality or diversity. And I think a very large part of the responsibility was the strategy and the power and the dynamism of Rudy and people like him, inside court and outside of court. And it's an amazing legacy. And I just wanted to share those stories with you. There are lots of others, and I know many people have them, but those are just some of the highlights. So, Yasmin, thank you for a beautiful event, and I pay tribute. I'm sure he is watching now, and will be equally proud of yourself and everybody here, because we're still here and fighting strong. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank Yasmin for inviting me to participate in this event. As you've heard, there are many more people who are far more qualified to speak about Rudy Narayan, the man, his work, and so forth. So I'm going to speak as a daughter of Windrush. There is something bittersweet about knowing that the world has changed in many ways since Rudy took on the establishment, and that some of those changes must be acknowledged and celebrated, whilst also recognising that not all shifts have been good and the positive changes have not gone too far. Rudy Narayan practiced at a time and in an environment where lawyers were white, male, and anyone in the law who didn't fit that description was viewed with, at best, suspicion, at worst, contempt. You may ask again, did we ever leave that time, or are we entering it again? Here I am, and there are more of us. I believe we're black, socially conscious lawyers. I'm not sure what the socially conscious bit means, but can I just say there are black lawyers doing legal aid work. Not all of us are going into the commercial sphere. Just think. Can you imagine a time back in the day, as the young people say to me, when you have had a black female solicitor, QC, with locks, actually practicing law? We know that Rudy Narayan was a towering monument to his generation, not just to those who had arrived from the Caribbean, but to others who were disenfranchised and marginalised in this, the seat of the empire. His work, his activism, shifted the face of our legal system, and Peter has mentioned some of the changes. And the legacy, his legacy, is undeniable. He provided a voice for both the black and the white vulnerable working class. He adopted a robust approach to racism at a time when such opposition was regarded as subversive and even revolutionary. In many ways, it still is, and many of us routinely navigate this terrain. We've heard of his fearless advocacy, especially in the Scarman inquiry and the Mangrove trial, which left an indelible mark few have managed to emulate since. I did not know him personally, but I do know that I am one of the generation of black lawyers who stand on his shoulders. We are, in essence, his legacy.
Now we're coming to almost the end. Now it's Courtney Griffiths here. Courtney Griffiths is our last speaker. Maybe he hasn't yet arrived. But anyway, in the meantime, we're going to call now on Keith just to play for us a couple of pieces. And by that time, we will hope that Courtney will arrive. Thank you very much for coming. Give him a hand again.
I think to sum up the experience of a lot of us who knew Rudy, I would like to play this piece called Redemption Song. going to end my... Is that okay? Yeah. I'm going to end my solo bit with a piece that I wrote called Guyana with Love. Thank you.
Quoting your fist, I'm afraid. So we are just about to wrap things up. And thank you for coming. It's been an interesting session. You've heard a lot of things about Rudy that I didn't know of. In that sense that a lot of stories, I'm sure, can be told. True stories about Rudy. I'm sure there's an endless amount of experiences. Because as a lawyer, as a civil rights activist, there's always something going on. You know? And I'm sure that the whole stress of all that often got to Rudy. I have a particular statement I use to the people in the community who are almost like martyrs, like community martyrs. They do so much work, and they do it selflessly. And Rudy was one of those people. But of course, there are always issues, personal issues in terms of how things are getting people down. The pressures, because nobody really is so like a wall. That particular wall doesn't get affected. Even if a sand or a flake of that wall comes up, it can affect you because nobody is so strong that no matter what happens, it doesn't affect you. See, and Rudy is such a person who has done so much. So, is Yasmin, can you just come to the front?
I just want to thank you all again for coming, and thank thank you again to the Windrush Foundation.
There are lots of books. There's a book of books by Rudy, and Ansel is conducting the sales over there. Aris isn't very well. Is in bed. So go and see Ansel, or go and see Michael Williams. He has books on science, and lots of books are over there.